And so again, your friendly local constitutional coach. And today's video subject is real ID, quote unquote. And it's up again on a federal level, and they can think they can do anything in my hometown of Washington, D.C. But the problem is, and this relates directly to travel, particularly on airplanes, the government has little, if anything, to do with that. And the Real ID forces you to volunteer into their federal, regional, martial law system and give up all your rights as if you haven't already done that in other areas. And it has to stop. I mean, just as simple as that. Real ID bullshit has to go out the window. Forget about it. Because number one, they think that you're a resident for all apparent intents and purposes in Washington, D.C., and need their ID. But most of us, if not all of us, are domiciled in state judicial districts in sovereign independent states. That said, I remember been a while ago, I started out my first law class, and my teacher was discussing this subject, not in this context, but said with regard to ID, his mom told him who he was when he was 4 years old, and he never forgot. That's ID, and I've got it backed up in my case with my paternal family Bible from 1855. And that works. Very early on, before I knew a lot about what I know now, I asked my dad to send it to me, which he did, although they would charge me with contempt of court practicing law without a license. And I show up at the hearing with this vintage family Bible, and this black robed bastard Balachi comes in there and sits down, shuffles through some papers, looks up, sees me obviously with a vintage family Bible. Bang! Down comes the hammer. Have a nice day. Don't do it again. I could prove I wasn't subject to their statutory jurisdiction, and neither are you. All these bastards recognize, or what I call just solely foreign state subordinate corporate, nay, dead citizens from the 14th Amendment, which I can also prove a cappella, like everything else I do, not only does not exist right along with the Hellenistic handmaid and civil rights, it never has. Best of all, potentially here, very recent events in the U.S. Supreme Court. I'll be talking more about that on an upcoming video. And this is June the 9th, I think. And it was set to announce an opinion tomorrow, I'm pretty sure, called SEC v. Jarkety. And that could be a real game changer, but more about that later. But back to the ID, I mean, you know who you are. And if you get any of their ID, you volunteer in, whether it's a driver's license, social insecurity, whatever it is. And license, by the way, Blackboard Law Dictionary, permission granted by competent authority to do an act without such permission would be illegal, a trespass or a tort. So we don't need any of their licenses. We know who the hell we are. We run our day-to-day lives. And we're not engaged in interstate commerce. That's a subject for another video, a very interesting subject. Because what we do, if it's commerce at all, it's intrastate, not interstate. So we're not subject to regulation by the bastards in the House and the Senate in Washington, D.C., which, as you'll learn in another upcoming video, has 0 qualified members in either house. Can't even pass any laws at all. It's astounding what the founding fathers did with that original Constitution. But they did, and we'll learn more about that later too. But they have ID to travel. I just never, and I haven't been able to get on a plane in over 20 years now, except when I got arrested 8 years ago in a library out here in California. And it turns out the arrest warrant came from Columbia, South Carolina, where I had never been. Now, you commit a crime in a place you've never been. It's like questions for another video, but I was able to, that they got from A to B, 4 different federal unmarked military aircraft. I could get on those without any ID. Amazing. But I got there, and I'll talk about this in other videos, but I'm going to do it again with my top line in case it's ridiculous as it was. But if you know what you're doing, they're very hard to reach, and they didn't get a hold of me there. I shut them down in 90 seconds. But that said, this ID business, and the big deal about this is even if some of you have it or are going to get it, you can make a very effective argument, particularly in our judicial courts. You'll learn more about that later too, because you go into their courts. What you're really in is an administrative tribunal. But this argument might be effective there too, that they've never made a full disclosure to you of all the terms and conditions of the agreement. And therefore, it's not a valid contract. And we have an unlimited power to contract, by the way, a right to that, Article 1, Section 10, and or the Ninth Amendment. And we start using these two articles a lot more in a wide variety of circumstances. You do a hell of a lot better, and these current justices know this right now. And a lot of other good things besides that. So, Real ID, eat. Have a nice day. See you later. I don't need it. You don't need it. Oh, by the way, remember to send me information. For information, send me an email at youwinnincourt@gmail.com. I should have been saying that throughout the video, but please remember to do that. And you learn about my constitutional defense document packets, and how to present a defense even in their corrupt courts, and do a good job in almost all settings they have, because every law they pass in Washington, D.C. doesn't count. There's nobody home. Well, it's also true on the quote-unquote state level, since as you'll learn, there are no sovereign independent states. To learn more about that in particular, send me an email, youwinnincourt@gmail.com, and all of it comes together, and we do have rights. We are real people, and that's the bottom line. Corporations aren't. They're going to love the video I've got upcoming next on that one, because that's all they recognize, corporations. So that said, send me an email, youwinnincourt@gmail.com. Remember to subscribe, like the video, tell your friends, get the word out. The quicker we take action, the quicker we get rid of these bastards. Thank you.